Hello and welcome to Plain Mundane Show. Today I'm going to read to you the Inner Earth Secret Diary Experience of Admiral Richard Byrd. This is the trip where Admiral Byrd visited the North Pole. A lot of people know he went to the South Pole, but this experience happened underneath the ice of the North Pole in a valley that he found that should not have been there. He says, I must write this diary in secrecy and obscurity. It concerns my Arctic flight of the 19th day of February in the year 1947. There comes a time when the rationality of men must fade into insignificance and one must accept the inevitability of the truth. I am not at liberty to disclose following documentation at this writing. Perhaps it shall never see the light of public scrutiny, but I must do my duty and record here for all to read one day. In a world of greed and exploitation of certain of mankind, can no longer suppress that which is truth. Okay, I'm going to skip his flight logs from when he took off and go straight to 11:30. He's in the plane with his navigator that's with him. His name is mentioned below. Well, you'll hear it when he comes back from a meeting. Now, Admiral Byrd met with an ancient master of the Aryan race. And this allegedly is the race that Adolf Hitler was trying to promote as well. The interesting thing about the story is at the end when he said goodbye to Admiral Byrd, he said it in German. He said, Auf Wiedersehen. All right, so at 11:30 hours, his plane has flown over a valley. Suddenly, he's supposed to be near the North Pole. He's flying over a green valley, and he makes several left turns, and he sees a woolly mammoth-looking creature, and he's about 2,000 feet above it. And these ships come up towards him on either side, and he's like stuck in a tractor beam. His engines quit working, and he goes down into this city. So countryside below, this is 11:30 hours. Countryside below is more level and normal, if I may use that word. Ahead we spot what seems to be a city. This is impossible. Aircraft seems light and oddly buoyant. The controls refuse to respond. My God, off our port and starboard wings are strange type of aircraft. They're closing rapidly alongside. They are disc-shaped and have a radiant quality to them. They're close enough now to see the markings on them. It is a type of swastika. This is fantastic. Where are we? What has happened? I tug at the controls again. They will not respond. We are caught in an invisible vice grip of some type. I might add here, folks, the swastika is an ancient symbol representing the expansion and contraction of the eternities. It depends on whether it's spinning counterclockwise or clockwise. Hitler turned it counterclockwise, but sometimes you'll find it in Australia, New Zealand, Indian subcontinent, China. It's in all of the most ancient cave drawings and writings and archaeology and sketches and tablets, the swastika. It was not original to the Nazis just during and before World War II. It's an ancient symbol from apparently ancient alien astronauts who these are who Byrd talked to and escorted him down to their city. 11:35 hours, our radio crackles and a voice comes through in English with what perhaps is a slight Nordic or Germanic accent. The message is, quote, welcome, Admiral, to our domain. We shall land you in exactly 7 minutes. Relax, Admiral. You are in good hands, close quote. I note the engines of our plane have stopped running. The aircraft is under some strange control and is now turning itself. The controls are useless. Another radio message received. We begin the landing process now, and in moments the plane shudders slightly and begins a descent as though caught in some great unseen elevator. The downward motion is negligible, and we touch down with only a slight jolt. 11:45 hours. I'm making a hasty last entry in the flight log. Several men are approaching on foot toward our aircraft. They are tall with blonde hair. In the distance is a large shimmering city pulsating with rainbow hues of color. I do not know what is going to happen now, but I see no signs of weapons on those approaching. I hear now a voice ordering me by name to open the cargo door. I comply. End log. From this point I write all the following events here from memory. It defies the imagination. It would seem All but madness if it had not happened. The radio man and I are taken from the aircraft and we are received in a most cordial manner. We are then boarded on a small platform-like conveyance with no wheels. It moves us toward the glowing city with swiftness, great swiftness. As we approach, the city seems to be made of a crystal material. Soon we arrive at a large building that is a type I've never seen before. It appears to be right out of the design board of a Frank Lloyd Wright, or perhaps more correctly out of Buck Rogers' setting. We are given some type of warm beverage which tasted like nothing I have ever savored before. It is delicious. After about 10 minutes or two of our wondrous appearing hosts come to our quarters and announce that I am to accompany them. I have no choice but to comply. I leave my radio man behind, and we walk a short distance and enter into what seems to be an elevator. We descend downward for some moments. The machine stops and the door lifts silently upward. We then proceed down a long hallway that is lit by a rose-colored light that seems to be emanating from the very walls themselves. One of the beings motions for us to stop before a great door. Over the door is an inscription I cannot read. The great door slides noiselessly open, and I am beckoned to enter. One of my hosts speaks, quote, "Have no fear, Admiral. You are to have an audience with the Master." Close quote. I step inside and my eyes adjust to the beautiful coloration that seems to be filling the room completely. Then I begin to see my surroundings. What greeted my eyes is the most beautiful sight of my entire existence. It is in fact too beautiful and wondrous to describe. It is exquisite and delicate. I do not think there exists a human term that can describe it in any detail with justice. My thoughts are interrupted in a cordial manner by a warm, rich voice of melodious quality. Quote, "I bid you welcome to our domain, Admiral." Close quote. I see a man with delicate features and with the etching of years upon his face. He is seated at a long table. He motions me to sit down in one of the chairs. After I am seated, he places his fingertips together and smiles. He speaks softly again and conveys the following. "We have let you enter here because you are of noble character and well known on the surface world, Admiral." "Surface world?" I gasp under my breath. "Yes," the master replies with a smile. "You are in the domain of the Aryani, the inner world of the earth. We shall not long delay your mission, but you will be safely escorted back to the surface for a distance beyond. But now, Admiral, I shall tell you why you have been summoned here. Our interest rightly begins just after your race exploded the first atomic bombs over Hiroshima and Nagasaki, Japan. It was at that alarming time we sent our flying machines, the Flugelrats, to your surface world to investigate what your race had done. That is, of course, past history now, my dear Admiral. But I must continue on. You see, we have never interfered before in your race's wars and barbarity, but now we must, for you have learned to tamper with a certain power that is not for man, namely that of atomic energy. Our emissaries have already delivered messages to the powers of your world, and yet they do not heed. Now you have been chosen to be witness here that our world does exist. You see, our culture and science is many thousands of years beyond your race, Admiral." I interrupted. "But what does this have to do with me, sir?" The master's eyes seemed to penetrate deeply into my mind, and after studying me for a few moments, he replied, "Your race has now reached the point of no return, for there are those among you who would destroy your very world rather than relinquish their power as they know it." I nodded, and the master continued, "In 1945 and afterward, we tried to contact your race, but our efforts were met with hostility. Our Flugelrats were fired upon, yes, even pursued with malice and animosity by your fighter planes. So now I say to you, my son, there is a great storm gathering in your world, a black fury that will not spend itself for many years. There will be no answer in your arms, there will be no safety in your science. It may rage on until every flower of your culture is trampled and all human things are leveled in vast chaos. Your recent war was only a prelude of what is yet to come for your race. We here see it more clearly with each hour. Do you say I am mistaken?" "No," I answer. "It happened once before. The Dark Ages came, and they lasted for more than 500 years." "Yes, my son," replied the master. "The Dark Ages that will come now for your race will cover the earth like a pall, but I believe that some of your race will live through the storm. Beyond that I cannot say. We see at a great distance a new world stirring from the ruins of your race, seeking its lost and legendary treasures, and they will be here, my son, safe in our keeping. When that time arrives, we shall come forward again to help revive your culture and your race. Perhaps by then you will have learned the futility of war and its strife, and after that time, certain of your culture and science will be returned for your race to begin anew. You, my son, are to return to the surface world with this message." With these closing words, our meeting seemed at an end. I stood for a moment as in a dream, but yet I knew this was reality, and for some strange reason I bowed slightly, either out of respect or humility, I do not know which. Suddenly I was again aware that the two beautiful hosts who had brought me here were again at my side. "This way, Admiral," motioned one. I turned once more before leaving and looked back toward the master. A gentle smile was etched on his delicate and ancient face. "Farewell, my son," he spoke. Then he gestured with the lovely slender hand of motion and of peace, and our meeting was truly ended. Quickly we walked back through the great door of the master's chamber and once again entered into the elevator. The door slid silently downward, and we were once again going upward. One of my hosts spoke again. "We must now make haste, Admiral, as the master desires to delay you no longer on your scheduled timetable, and you must return with his message to your race." I said nothing. All of this was almost beyond belief, and once again my thoughts were interrupted as we stopped. I entered the room and was again with my radio man. He had an anxious expression on his face. I approached and said, "It is all right, Howie." Howie was his name. "It is all right." The two beings motioned us toward the waiting conveyance. We boarded and soon arrived back at the aircraft. The engines were idling, and we boarded immediately. The whole atmosphere seemed charged now with a certain air of urgency. After the cargo door was closed, the aircraft was immediately lifted by that unseen force until we reached an altitude of 2,700 feet. Two of the aircraft were alongside for some distance, guiding us on our return way. I must state here the airspeed indicator registered no reading, yet we were moving along at a very rapid rate. At 2:15 hours, a radio message comes through. "We are leaving you now, Admiral. Your controls are free. Auf Wiedersehen." We watched for a moment as the Flugelrost disappeared into the pale blue sky. The aircraft suddenly felt as though caught in a sharp downward draft for a moment. We quickly recovered our control. We do not speak for some time. Each man has his thoughts. At 2:20 hours, we are again over vast areas of ice and snow and approximately 27 minutes from base camp. We radio them, they respond. We report all conditions normal. Base camp expresses relief at our reestablished contact. At 300 hours, we land smoothly at base camp. I have a mission. End of log entries. Okay, I'm not going to read the rest of it. It's available online. But he goes back to the Pentagon. President is advised, which is Eisenhower at the time. He's given a full check over by a medical team and probed. He said it was an ordeal. He makes another entry like 9 years later before he dies in 1956 in December. And he says, "Just as the long night of the Arctic ends, the brilliant sunshine of truth shall come again. And those who are of darkness shall fall in its light. For I have seen that land beyond the pole, that center of the great unknown." Admiral Richard E. Byrd. E stands for Evelyn. His middle name was Evelyn. United States Navy, 24 December 1956. And that's the story, folks. That's the diary entry of Admiral Richard Evelyn Byrd and his meeting with the Master in a city under the North Pole that had a rainbow-colored bright brilliance to it, with swastika symbols on round saucer craft, and men who spoke German and looked Nordic. Now, is it true or not? Some of the questions I would have if you wanted to analyze this thing were, let's say that is a being that lives in a city under the North Pole and it's ancient. Let's say it's someone that lives like biblical anti-flood, before the flood, anti-flood, like antediluvian. Maybe he's lived for thousands of years. What if he's Lucifer? You know, Lucifer was cast out, came down here, but came from God's presence, incarnated here, and is stuck here in this dimension, in this world, as a penalty, castigated to remain here. Maybe he set up camp under the North Pole, and he's the leader of the white Aryan race. I don't know. Or maybe, let's say, he's the things that we think about biblically about Lucifer and all that, maybe they're rubbish. And you go back to the Anu and Enki and the Enkyites and the Enlil and the gods with the small g that came from somewhere else in our wandering star system and have stayed here and lived underground. Maybe they came from Venus. Maybe they came from um, Saturn. Maybe they came from Jupiter or, one of the other wandering stars and have a base. Or maybe they all live here because they can't live on their planet. Maybe their planet was destroyed. What was that one called? Marduk that exploded. There are a lot of different questions I have about this as far as who are the Aryans? Why are they blonde Nordic looking people? Why do they have Germanic accents and speak German? And why do they use the swastika? How did the Thule Society in Germany, Austria, that initiated and trained up Hitler, get the swastika and the contact? They obviously had that contact before Adolf Hitler did. If you've heard of the Vril Society, the women with the extremely long hair for receiving the messages from the Aryans. We're missing a lot of history, folks. You hear about these book burnings, like in Germany when all the books were burned in Berlin. I've actually been to that university in the square where all the books were burnt when I visited Berlin. I've been to Alexandria also, where they had another great destruction of a whole library. What were in those books and scrolls and tablets that were all destroyed? The truth. What we have today is history from mainly a Bible, a Hebrew Bible that people rely on. And then we find these other ancient archaeological facts that don't have any correlation with anything. We can't figure anything out. And science differs from religion as far as history goes. Anyway, thank you for coming to Plain Mundane Show. Please hit like, subscribe, and ring that bell for notifications. I'm Alex Aquarius. Goodbye.